Mike Wobschall, Vikings insider, joins us here to preview the matchup. Mike, good morning. Roger Weiland in Albany. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Roger. Good morning to you as well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Listen, I mean, the Vikings, you lose a starting quarterback, then you lose a starting running back, you lose an offensive tackle, and yet the Vikings are 3-0. Are you a little surprised at the start?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised about the resiliency this team showed. I mean, the leader is Mike Zimmer, and this is a guy who was coaching for 30 years before he got his shot to be a head coach. And then his first year with us, 2014, his first year as a head coach, Adrian Peterson gets suspended after week 1 and misses the first 15 games. And then also that year the Vikings played 3 different quarterbacks in like the first 4 games. And there was a lot of injuries on our defense at the end of last season. And now you have you referenced the Teddy Bridgewater, Adrian Peterson injuries. I mean, Mike Zimmer just keeps ticking. And I think this team kind of follows Zimmer's beat. And so I'm not surprised that this team responded and showed some resiliency. But I don't think you'd find a lot of people who would have predicted a 3-0 start for this team, particularly given the opponent in week 2 and 3 being Green Bay Packers and Carolina Panthers. So I see this team every day, and I believe in them, so I'm not surprised they won those games. But I think the Vikings are a surprise team through this point of the season, being undefeated given the injuries they've had.
Yeah, and speaking of injuries, as we talk and preview the Monday Nighter Giants in Minnesota, this Giants secondary, Mike, is very banged up going into this game. Talk about Bradford and the passing game, and you've got a second-year wideout from Maryland who seems to be turning some heads. Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. Stefon Diggs really has. He was inactive for the first 3 games last year, and then came on in week 4 and had 2 100-yard games in his first 3 weeks active on the roster. So, and he's a guy that our coaching staff, actually, a few of the coaches on our staff know from his high school days because they recruited him when they were college coaches. So it's really a good pairing, Stefon Diggs with this offense, and hopefully he can have a big game tonight because we're going to need him to get that passing game going. And so, he's been a lot of fun to watch. Now, the Giants are another team that's not going to feel sorry for the Vikings and their injuries because you're right, the Giants have also had to deal with some injuries, and we don't know which of those guys are going to be able to play and not. I'm particularly interested in Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie tonight to see if he's going to play because I think he can be a solid player, and for them to miss him, that'd be an advantage for the Vikings. So, it'll be interesting to see how the injuries shake out. We're still early in the season, so coaches, you know how they are. They're myopic. They're thinking, how do we win this week? But we're still early in the season, so you got to consider that in terms of whether you're going to push guys to play in a game. You still got another 12 games to go after this one.
Mike, we know you're a Vikings insider, but try to switch places for just a second. If the Giants are going to be successful tonight, what will they have to do to expose the Vikings?
Well, I think, a big advantage for the Vikings defense that they've gotten on these first 3 opponents is they whether it's by the opponent's choice or whether the game situation dictates it, the opponent gets into these passing situations. That's where Mike Zimmer can get creative with his pressures and blitzes and the nickel pass rush and the sub packages. So I think if the Giants come in and they can find a way to run the ball, now I know Rashad Jennings is a question mark. No Shane Vereen. But if the Giants, whoever it is that's playing, if it's Darkwa or whoever it may be, if they can find a way to at least have some balance on offense and stay in their base package and force the Vikings to stay in their base defense, then I think the Giants offense will have a shot to score some points. Now, those 3 receivers that the Giants have are no joke. And 49-17 was the score between these 2 teams last year, and it went the way of the Vikings. But those 3 receivers, Beckham Jr., Cruz, and Shepard, none of those guys were playing. So this Giants offense is something that the Vikings are taking seriously, and I think the route to success for the Giants is to have balance, find a way to run the ball. I know that Eli can get the ball out quickly, and those receivers are good, but if you're balanced against the Vikings, you got a better chance. Defensively, for the Giants, it's going to be pass rush. I think, the offensive line for the Vikings has dealt with some injuries. Alex Boone hopefully will be able to play. He had to leave the game last week. Whether he plays or not, we'll see. But if Olivier Vernon and Jason Pierre-Paul and Snacks can get after the passer, I think the Giants also will have a good chance to have some success on defense. So to me, it's old school football. Run the ball on offense, pressure the quarterback on defense. If the Giants can do that, we're going to have a good game tonight.
Monday morning here on Big Board Sports. Roger Weiland, Zach By, Mike Wobschall, Vikings Insider previewing the Monday Nighter. And you talk about that defense, Mike. How about this stat for the Giants? They spent a lot of money in the offseason. Their defense, the only team in the NFL without a takeaway on defense, the lone turnover so far this season created by the special teams. It's almost like the Giants are due to turn over somebody. And you think with the money they spent in the offseason, they would have at least one turnover by the defense, but they're 0 for 3.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's only 4 sacks on the season, too. And so you certainly would have expected more. Now, I think Janoris Jenkins has played pretty well. That's my perspective from the cornfields here in Minnesota. You may feel differently. But, I think he's played pretty well. And normally when you splash big time in free agency, it doesn't work that well. But the Giants have a chance to make this work, so we'll see what happens. Now, turning the ball over, obviously very important. The Vikings are +8 in turnover margin this season. And really, the Vikings' only turnover was when our safety, Andrew Sendejo, picked up an Aaron Rodgers fumble. Or actually, I think it was a Devontae Adams fumble. And then he fumbled it when he was returning the fumble. That's the Vikings' only turnover this year.
Yeah,
that's been a big key to their success.
No doubt. I mean, that is an amazing stat, too.
Yeah, and so if Sam Bradford can hold on to the ball, but that goes back to the pass rush. I think the best way to get a quarterback to turn the ball over is to pressure him with a pass rush. And so far, Bradford's been able to avoid that, not because he's a guy who can move around and use his mobility, but he's gotten the ball out quickly. And so Janoris Jenkins can be good. And that's why I think Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie's inclusion tonight would be very big for the Giants, because if those guys can make Bradford hold the ball for an extra beat, it might allow some time for that pass rush to get home.
Mike, how real is the home field advantage when we tune in tonight to see the second time right in the new facility, the new U.S. Bank Stadium?
Yeah, well, it was certainly real on Sunday night a couple of weeks ago against the Packers. There's no doubt about that. There was the new Vikings war chant that was started. Fran Tarkenton and Chris Carter were in the house. I mean, that place was rocking. Of course, it was the Green Bay Packers, which is the Vikings' biggest rival. So, it's going to be amped up anyway. But, it was a big night, and it was really loud in there. I anticipate a similar environment tonight, guys, because the Vikings are coming off a big win over Carolina. It's Monday night. People have all day to get excited. And that building, by its nature, I think is going to be a loud building because it's really tight. It's the closest suites and seats to the field in the NFL. And it's just, with the ETFE roof, the sound bounces off of it. I'm not an engineer or an architect. I've been in there and I've heard it. It can get really loud in there. So as long as the Vikings give the crowd something to cheer about, I think that place is going to be loud. I expect the Giants to use their no huddle. Not necessarily hurry up, but I expect them to use the no huddle to try and offset some of that. Of course, they're going to have to use the silent count, so that's going to put a lot of pressure on the Giants' offensive tackles to get off to a good start and contain Everson Griffin, Danielle Hunter, and Brian Robinson, which is no easy task.
Did you make a prediction on this game, Mike?
Well, I see the Vikings winning this game, but it's funny, guys, because for the first few weeks, you watch all the outsiders picks, and they're picking against the Vikings. They've been on the road twice. They've played Green Bay the other time, so it's really was easy to pick against the Vikings. This week, you're seeing everyone pick the Vikings, so I'm kind of uncomfortable with that. I like the underdog role a little bit better. I can tell you for certain that Mike Zimmer is not taking this team lightly. He has told his team and our media that this is not the same Giants team that came to Minnesota last year. It's a different team with a lot of different parts and a lot of better parts. So the Vikings are not taking them lightly, and I think it's going to be a great way to close Week 4. The Vikings and Giants on Monday night should be a lot of fun.
Mike, thanks for a few minutes. We appreciate it. Vikings insider Mike Wobschall with us here on Big Board Sport. Thank you, Mike.
You bet, guys. Have a good one.